welcome to Mindscapes, a series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a remarkable, vibrant lady who combines an activist interest, an activist commitment with her work as a novelist and writer. She has won India's highest literary award, the Gyanpith, and the Asian Nobel Prize, the Magsaysay Award, for her work with the tribals. I'm delighted to welcome Mahasweta Devi. Welcome. Okay. You studied in the sort of the quiet anguish of Shantiniketan. When I say the quiet anguish, I mean that was sort of Tagore's philosophy, and Shantiniketan has a sort of ambience of serenity, quiet, and philosophy. And you evolved into a passionate activist. Was there a catalytic moment? What happened?
No, it's not like that. I went to Shantiniketan as a child, and I think the education system was there excellent, very innovative, very new. It taught us to be independent, to think for oneself, and to act. And later I went back after his death, but when he was alive I was there for 3 years. And when I think of my life, I think it's a very logical, I find it very logical, because I chose my ways long ago. I was never one for, never one for the mainstream. A life of too many struggles, but I think my focus was on the right direction.
When you say the focus was on the right direction, what was this focus? Your writings focus enormously on the struggles, the exploitation of the individual, and they don't just sort of end with capturing or narrating that story, but also in some senses plant the seeds of resistance, plant the seeds of protest.
I believe in resistance, I believe in protest, and I believe that struggle never ends. It goes on and on and on.
What do you think preceded it? What was your sense of protest?
No, it's not like that. I came from more or less an affluent and very cultured family of Bengal. My father's youngest brother was Ritik Ghatak. Our family was very different. And my mother's brother is Shankha Chaudhary. Another brother was Sachin Chaudhary, who founded Economic and Political Weekly. So this was not a very common family. Even in Bengal, we are different. And then I married a communist. I was just completed 20. Then I married Bijan Bhattacharya, who wrote Navanna and who was one of the founder members of IPTA. And I married poverty and struggle as well. So then that was my first hand experience with other side of the society.
So what was the first impetus to art? Was activism, to use art, to use writing to focus on suffering and catalyze action?
Then I did not start writing. Real inspiration to write anything came when we were in Bombay. My husband was writing the story for the then a very big hit, Nagin. The story was written by him. For money he had to write it. And then I came across Savarkar's book on the Rani of Jhansi. And I had this mad desire of writing her biography. With that I came back from Bombay to Calcutta. Under the prominent historians of Calcutta, under their guidance, I did paperwork as much as I could. I learned to read Marathi, got her biography written in Marathi. I had it sent to me in Calcutta. Went to Maharashtra Bhavan where Marathis lived. With their help I translated the book. And I made contact with the nephew of the Rani of Jhansi. And at one stage I wrote 300 pages, then I tore it up.
Do you still find that when you write that you tear up things that you write? How do you approach writing? Is it sort of that first impulse of inspiration?
After that I have become a professional. Then I wrote the book, it was highly appreciated, and very recently it has been translated into Hindi. All my books are translated in Hindi, in other languages also, but in Hindi I am perhaps one of the best sellers.
When you say you became professional, what does that mean?
That means from that time writing has been my only profession. Till date writing has remained the only profession by which I purchase my rice and dal, as you can say.
So this aspect of being a professional writer, you've done about 100 novels, you've done 20 collections of short stories, you have been truly prolific.
Yes.
Is there a set time of day that you write? You do so many things. How does it work?
There was a time when I could sit and write at any time. And in the 60s, I left Bijan. I started living alone. Then I remarried. Then I again divorced him. And from 75, I have been living alone. And writing has become something, my serious writings, good writings, some are good. I think and think. The process, takes place in the mind. First, it's very centrifugal, very spread. Then it becomes a hardcore nucleus. From that I start, and it starts spreading.
So when you say that some of it is good, what for you is good writing?
Some of them are good. Many stories are there, and I think Jungle Ke Davedar is not bad.
What is a good story for you?
Some stories, after writing which not all have been translated into English, like a story like Breast Giver. In order to write that, I went to doctors, went to study cases of breast cancer, then I wrote that story.
There you have in that you have in that piece a very allegorical comparison to West Bengal, perhaps India, sort of feeding onto her breast and draining it like.
Yes, yes. She gives her all, but none comes to her rescue.
How do you sort of see this analogy between a woman with breast cancer and
woman with breast cancer because she overfed too many children? It's something very inevitable. It happens with such women. But when I was asked, when Gayatri Spivak translated it into English, she is very academic, she understands a lot. So I can't do this dissertation on my stories. I can't give you the theoretical side of it. I can only tell you what I felt. For me it was something, a woman, and it was written, I use this, I believe in this, savage black humor. Savage black humor. My approach is forensic. I tear the society, the outer curbs.
You said that you don't always see the sort of the results or the insights that academic scrutiny brings to your work. No. Are you sometimes surprised at what people have to say about your work?
I'm not surprised, but that's not my area. That's my job is to write. It's the critic's job is to see it in whatever light they want to. But Gayatri has been a very attentive and very special translator. She can get under my skin very well, and she can bring out in English almost what I wrote in Bengali.
So to what degree do you agree with this analogy, that this was really, the woman symbolized the nation?
That is mine. That is my analogy. It was my analogy, a simple explanation. But I never knew that my stories would trigger so many critical, opinions and things like that.
So whose admiration or response matters to you? You're so close to the people.
I'm very close to the people, but I told you my approach to literature is definitely does with emotion, but it's very forensic as well.
By forensic you mean it's
By forensic I mean I'm very analytical, very ruthless, very cruel, and very, what shall I say, I maintain my very objective, My writing is not subjective writing, and I keep my distance.
Is it then for you, sort of, you write to make a living? Is it a process of catharsis? Is it a process of activism? What is the impulse to write, a primary impulse?
You know, my job, my Jivan Darshan or whatever you say, is divided between two premises, needful or needless. I stick to the needful. For me, seminars and things like that, to talk on things, is needless. Work matters more. Writing is also work for me. I write creatively. I edit a very different kind of journal in Bengali, quarterly, in which only the grassroots level people write. I publish their writing, thus I get to know them. Then I am a very regular and investigative reporter. I have been in Bengali for a long time. In English also I wrote some, but now mostly in Bengali. And I work. These activist is a word of the last 20 years or 15 years coinage. I did not know I was an activist. When I went to the bonded laborers of Palamau, or the first phase of Jharkhand, I was in Shingbhum, or I went to investigate into the cases of tribals suffering from asbestosis or silicosis, or when I was trying to rescue migratory tribal labor women from the brick fields of West Bengal.
You had many areas of, and I
areas of activity.
I hesitate to use the word activist, but how would you have described yourself? The activist has almost become a sort of polluted word, somebody who waves a flag.
I felt that these are unexplored areas, work needs to be done, so I went there. I felt this should be highlighted, this should be focused, and some redress must come to these people. More I did it, thus fumbling, I tried many fields. Then I ended with the so-called criminal tribes of India, those who were branded criminals once by this Criminal Tribes Act in 1871. In West Bengal there are 3 such tribes. I fought for them, I fight for them, and for one tribe at least I have found, I am connected and other people have come. It is not me alone, but others also. This is a very strong organization, and you will understand my commitment that we never neglect. Whenever even a single person is in distress, someone needs to go to school, someone has been tortured by police, we are always there.
In a country where there is still so much exploitation, so much destitution,
yes.
What was it that drew you to the predicament of the tribals?
Because they are the most misunderstood and exploited and neglected citizens of India, because mainstream always bypassed them. From the Vedic times, from ancient times they are being maligned, but they are, what drew me to them, that I found amongst them a degree of civilization unthinkable in our society.
What are the elements of this civilization in the tribes?
The tribals, there is no bride, every girl child is very welcome, a daughter is greatly welcome. There is no dowry. Divorce is accepted by society. Remarriage after divorce is accepted by their society. Widow remarriage is very common. No child is ever an orphan even if his or her parents die. The community bring them up. Such things are unthinkable, what I have seen in them.
So what kind of relationship do you see? There is at one level the temptation to sort of idealize tribals and keep them as if in a museum.
No.
Or their integration, or do we corrupt them, or we civilize them?
We
what
have
is the
tried our
relationship?
level best to corrupt them. We have dumped our garbage on them for centuries, not today. All the rebellions that took place in the eastern sector, at least, the great Santhal rebellion, or Birsa Munda's rebellion. That was the time when, you know, moneylenders and others were entering their area, taking their land and everything, abusing their women, which angered them very much. So, the most oppressed people and misunderstood people, because amidst them I have found such understanding. My approach was always, you know, one who I am representative of that section of the society which have done unthinkable damage to them. So this is like Shama Prarthana.
Do you circumscribe your work, your approaches with an ideology?
This is not ideology, this I believe in. This is just, I beg forgiveness of them with my work, with my writing, everything.
You've described you know, the criminal tribes, and to those of us who haven't had sort of the exposure and the insight and the understanding of that, the very notion of a tribe, a group of people being branded criminal is revolting.
Is revolting, but in Delhi, anything happening, you will see the Delhi police will victimize either the Baurias or Sansis or Kanjarvats or Pardhis. Any crime taking place anywhere, they are the first victims. But the crimes which are, you know, ruining India today, the big crimes, the big criminals always escape.
So
they get caught.
In terms of your work, is it enough that we change the laws and denotify these tribes?
They have been denotified. Denotified, the word has become synonymous with the word notified. Once they were notified by the British as criminals, Government of India denotified them in 52. Government of India introduced in 1959, 7 years after denotification, the Habitual Offenders Act, which is, in other words, a repetition of Criminal Tribes Act, and they went on doing it in different states.
What are the mechanisms that we can use to begin to redress the centuries of injustice?
These centuries of injustice, you know, one individual cannot do it. I am instrumental because I was the only individual who was thinking of them, writing on them, fighting with government, fighting with police for the last 20 years or so, or more than that. Then this All India organization was formed in 1998 when I came to Baroda to give very eloquent lecture. I said, you people are working for the tribals. I have worked for the tribals all my life, but these people need special attention because great wrong is being done unto them and it's continuing. So fighting began, and making a law is good because in India from 75 onwards 2 good things have come, you know, in our life. One is investigative journalism, which was not so much in vogue before, and then these human rights laws and things. These are those who want to implement the law, they have to fight for it, get organized, go to the people, know their misery. This is lifelong work. As Baba Amte is doing, having sympathy for the lepers is not enough. He is living with them, living among them, giving them human dignity. He is giving them human rights. He is trying to get them human rights. The lepers are very much a part of our society, Indian society. We have no right to discard them. But see, from the time of the Purana, the greatest curse was to have leprosy, which is a very, very easily curable disease, time taking, but easily curable.
I'd mentioned this aspect, and you've said that you don't really have a religion. You, your husband, first husband, was a communist.
Not because of communism. I do not believe in. I became that way a non-believer, but I do not disrespect people who are very religious or do this or that. I do not laugh at them or jeer at them.
But is your activism, your fight, shall we say, for the causes that you believe in, circumscribed by a communist ideology or some ideology, or how do you?
No. Communism I do not know whether I was I was left. I'm still perhaps left in thinking or things like that.
What is someone who is left in thinking?
Left in thinking, I always take the side of the people. I see things from the viewpoint of the people. The person who suffers, person who cannot purchase rice, person who doesn't have a cloth to cover her shame.
But do you think that this is sort of the prerogative of the left? Isn't this
No.
a larger humanism that?
No, it doesn't. It is not explained by that. I am like this, you see. So these days, increasingly, what I find formidable about myself, I am rather afraid of this Mahasweta, because increasingly I find I can't encompass this Mahasweta. She is always growing. She is expanding in so many directions. Which woman, tell me, in her senses, would go walk all over Palamou to work for the bonded laborers of Palamou? Who would form their organization? Who would go to the tribals and see their misery and write? No one asked me to. I did it on my own.
Have you thought of why?
Never. It needs to be done. I try to do it. If I can, I always say, I can try, but the result is not in my hands. But I'll try. And I have seen that by sheer trying, by sheer effort, by letting you know that I am with you, I will fight for you, it gives the suffering one enormous courage.
What does it give you?
This is the only way I can live. I could not live any other way. That's the only life. It is self-chosen, and it's killing me slowly because I am getting old. But still I am always on the run. But I think this time I will give myself some rest because I am 75. I want to have few months of rest so that I can write things I want to.
Do you find that the process of writing is a kind of catharsis for all the anguish that you experience?
Anguish I see things like that, but I write, I do not get disturbed. I don't get agonized over the characters, but I want write in order to make people think, feel. I want to rob them of their sleep. I don't write to put them to sleep. I can't write things with happy endings. Not all endings are unhappy, but there is always, because I believe whatever you do, as life goes on, as the river goes on, these things will go on. I believe in continuity, eternity of life. So in Bengali I would have said it is Jibaner Joy Gan.
You write, you're an activist, you seek to catalyze change, life moves on.
Yes.
Do you feel you make a difference?
No, I think it's very logically and very thoroughly, very strongly, everything is
cyclical,
yes,
a cycle.
Yes.
So as sort of the rest of your life unfolds,
yes,
where do you think the cycle will go? You want some months rest?
No,
you want to write?
This is because very recently, in July I had a transient attack. There was slight hemorrhage on this side. Left side became affected. So I am not, as I have been tremendously physically fit. And I am ashamed to say from childhood till date, I have never had one day of fever or headache or stomach upset.
Why are you ashamed to say
cough
that?
And cold. Because it never, I was ashamed to say I am so healthy and I am so hardy. I wrote, there are stories like Draupadi, like Breast Giver. I wrote in one day without sleeping day and night.
So now
Such major stories I wrote in one day.
Now do you feel, do you experience any fear that you're slowing
fear.
down? And
No. I am not afraid of that. What I am thinking that after this illness, some breathing trouble, something is there. So I have to do yoga very thoroughly, regularly and thoroughly. So for 3-4 months I should stay in Calcutta and get myself rejuvenated.
Mm-hmm.
I am 75 in age, but I feel 25. So there must be, this 75 thing must be brought down.
Mahasweta Devi, you have so many profiles, talents and personalities. If I were to meet you and I didn't know who you were, what would you describe yourself as?
As an ordinary human being.
Thank you very much.
To be independent, to think for oneself and to act. And later I went back after his death, but when he was alive I was there for 3 years. And when I think of my life, I think it's a very logical, I find it very logical, because I chose my ways long ago. I was never one for, never one for the mainstream. A life of too many struggles, but I think my focus was on the right direction.
When you say the focus was on the right direction, what was this focus? Your writings focus enormously on the struggles, the exploitation of the individual, and they don't just sort of end with capturing or narrating that story, but also in some senses plant the seeds of resistance, plant the seeds of protest.
I believe in resistance, I believe in protest.
Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, a series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a remarkable, vibrant lady who combines an activist interest, an activist commitment with her work as a novelist and writer. She has won India's highest literary award, the Gyanpith, and the Asian Nobel Prize, the Magsaysay Award, for her work with the tribals. I'm delighted to welcome Mahasweta Devi. Welcome. You studied in the sort of the quiet anguish of Shantiniketan. When I say the quiet anguish, I mean that was sort of Tagore's philosophy, and Shantiniketan has a sort of ambience of serenity, quiet, and philosophy. And you evolved into a passionate activist. Was there a catalytic moment? What happened?
No, it's not like that. I went to Shantiniketan as a child, and I think the education system was there excellent, very innovative, very new. It taught us